Welcome to this month's Talking the Tea with Dr. K. As you read, hopefully you read, if not, spoiler alert, go back and read. This is the first of a 5-part series. The first part of the series is called, what is it called? Oh, labels versus identifiers. That's what it is. So this month we're going to be talking about labels versus identifiers. And then next month, we're going to be talking about toxic Christianity. You have to follow along if you want to know how they're connected. But for today's thing, I want to talk about labels and identifiers. And I have decided that I am going to channel my inner Bill Nye the Science Guy. And I am going to use props to explain this very simple yet difficult thing called identifiers and labels. So first of all, an identifier is something that identifies a place in which you begin exploration of a subject or a topic. In this case, we're actually going to talk about applying it to people. But I have chosen some friends of mine here, Ms. Jiff, Mr. Skippy, Ms. Apple, Mix, I believe, Migs Welch, and some other people here to explain this to you. Labels are something in which we use to define what something is made up of. Labels are like a square box. Identifiers are like a doorway. Now, in this case, I have chosen these things to demonstrate this with because we are all familiar with labels. On Migs Welch, we have a very small label that says ingredients. It starts with puree, grape, and peach, and all sorts of stuff. We know that it has fruit as its first ingredient. How do we know that? Well, it says fruit is our first ingredient. But that is a label. It tells you, it's supposed to tell you, we're going to assume it's correct, that everything that is in these individual little fruit snacks is on that label. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we look over here and we can see that Ms. Jiff also has a label, and it has ingredients, a beginning, a middle, and an end. But then we have identifiers. We have the identifier of, let's say, fruit. If someone says fruit, it opens the doorway because the fruit could be a red, delicious apple. The fruit might be a banana. It might even be a Chiquita banana. Or could we call fruit snacks, whose first ingredient is fruit, would that qualify under fruit? Well, for some people, it would. Other people may say no. Some people say, well, it's mixed fruit. So it's not really a fruit, it's a mixed fruit. Well, as we look at this and we say fruit, we can go down the next level and we can say, it's an apple, or it's a red delicious apple, which continues to identify as the doorway opens up. But we don't know whether this red delicious apple came from the orchards of New York, or the orchards of New Hampshire, or the orchards of Western Washington. They all have apple groves. In fact, a lot of states have apple groves. And what's inside this red delicious apple might be different than what is in the red delicious apple that came from actually Eastern Washington state. I misspoke, is where you're going to find more apple groves, or Oregon. It's kind of, sort of, a lot, but not identical. The nutrient content may be a little different because the growing season, what's in the air, what's in the ground, what did they use to fertilize, or did they not use anything to fertilize outside of nature fertilizing for itself? Because nature can do that. We forget that sometimes. Is this Chiquita banana from Panama? Or is it from Hawaii? I bet what's in there, actually, it's not identical. It doesn't have the exact same makeup as the one from Puerto Rico. When we look over here, we can say, well, there's butter. Well, butter is an identifier. We have good old moo butter. We have a whipped peanut spread. A little questionable. We should read the label on this one before we eat it. Or we have a peanut butter. But peanut butter is a further identifier. But we also have a extra crunchy super chunk. Well, that's a creamy smooth. And this is a reduced fat. So each time you go down, you find out more, but you don't completely identify. We can use all of this towards people. When we use labels on people, we put them in a box. In that box, we have decided everything that makes that person up. It is a limited concept. We don't take in any kind of individuality. We don't ask if those people is from Puerto Rico or from Panama. We're not sure if they were brought up in Eastern Washington State, or maybe they came from the orchards. I almost did it right twice in a row. Oh, well, I'm human. Of New Hampshire. Every time we label a group of people, it's like we're labeling the fruit. But you can't label fruit. You can only identify fruit. Because every fruit is going to be different. And this mixed fruit, well, it could be like somebody who's of a mixed race. What happens if somebody is part Caucasian? What happens if they're part Hispanic? What happens if they're non-binary and they feel like they don't identify clearly with either gender, or that they do with both genders? Identifiers invite us in with a place to begin our step forward in understanding. It is not a small, boxed, limited way of seeing things. When we're dealing with people, we should always avoid labels. Whether labels are like ADD, ADHD, whether it's like male, female, whether it is Black or Hispanic or Caucasian or Asian, male or female. We should never use them as labels, only as identifiers. Next month, we're going to continue this series, and I'm going to leave you guessing what the connection is between this and toxic Christianity. Namaste.